Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be doing a video for anyone who is newly diagnosed or some who may have been misdiagnosed or some people that are just getting their diagnosis. And the reason I wanted to take a moment to focus on this for a minute was because I've been getting a lot of questions either by email and some by comments of people that are having trouble with their diagnosis or that maybe are just getting their diagnosis. And I do realize that it is a really scary process to go through, and it kind of helps to talk to other people and get some questions answered. So what I wanted to do today was just share some of the stuff that I actually wish that I knew before getting my diagnosis, and it would have helped make the process a lot more smoother. So forgive me if this video seems like it jumps around a lot. I've tried to organize it in a way that it moves from one thing to the next and makes sense, but I'm not sure that I've done that. I've also written down some notes because there's so much information and I want to try to just get it in as quickly as possible without doing my whole story again. So I'm just going to run through some things that I felt that I know now that if I would have known when I was first diagnosed or when they were trying to figure out what was wrong, that it would have helped so much. The first thing I'm going to say is, well, this really pertains to like COPD, PH, and possibly even congestive heart failure. And can include asthma in a way, and I'm going to get to why I say that. So the first thing I wish I would have known was more about pH. I wish they would do campaigns like they do for diabetes or heart disease, because pH is something that I don't even think a lot of doctors are very familiar with, and so it's often misdiagnosed. And the reason I think it's so important for everybody to know about it is because so many different things can cause it. So, in other words, you can have COPD or asthma or sleep apnea or arthritis. And all of these things can cause pH. There's more things too, but I'm just going to let that give you some idea of what can cause pH. And then in addition to that, it can also be idiopathic. So in other words, they can have no cause at all for it. It could just be genetic or some other unknown reasons. So, and pH, why it's important is because it masquerades as COPD, asthma, and some other, heart disease and some other things. So it's important for doctors to be able to identify, that specific disease because it needs to be treated specifically. So even if you have COPD, if you also have pH, then that needs to be identified so that it can be treated. So that's one reason why I think it's super important that as much awareness can be raised about pH as possible, because it will help people get the proper diagnosis faster. And then with pH, some of the common things that sensations that people may have or symptoms are a fast pulse. You can get a low O2 readings from that as well. And when I say low O2 readings, you might be wondering, how would you know that at home? An oximeter. If you're having trouble breathing, I would definitely say this is a tool that you need to have in your house. And you can get them at Walgreens or online. They're an oximeter, and you can pick them up for under $20. And what it will show you is your blood oxygen level and your heart rate. So you can, at any time that you're feeling a certain way, you can put it on your finger and it will show you what your heart rate and your blood oxygen level is. And that way you can kind of get some feedback and start making connections with how you feel and what your O2 levels are and this and that. Also, sometimes when they're trying to diagnose for COPD, I know for myself, I really didn't feel like I was having trouble breathing with my lungs. I felt like it was a tightness in the center of my chest. And as it turns out, what I was having a problem with, and see here, so you can just kind of see the O2 level and the heart rate. So, but I felt a tightness in my chest, and I felt like that's what was really interfering with my breathing. And so the inhalers and the other things that my pulmonologist was giving me to help wasn't really helping, and it was because the pH was affecting my breathing as well. So it really helps for us to be very clear with our symptoms. So let's see, here's where it starts to jump around, and it gets really hard to. So I'm going to now move to COPD and asthma, because a lot of people are misdiagnosed with asthma first, and then COPD, and then on to pH. So it really confuses me why it's so hard for them to diagnose the asthma versus the COPD. Because when you learn more about asthma, that's a restrictive airway disease. So in other words, what it means is people have trouble getting air in. With COPD, it's a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which usually means that you're having trouble getting air out. So when you think about your symptoms in terms of what you're trying to explain to the doctor, keep this in mind and kind of notice whether your breathing is coming from your lungs that you're having trouble with, or the center of your chest. The center of your chest could be more of a heart problem. Not to say that it wouldn't be COPD too, because a lot of times they're interrelated. But it helps to get the treatments right. And then, do you have trouble getting air in, or do you have trouble getting air out? By explaining these different things to the doctor, you can a lot of times get to the diagnosis faster. And had I known this stuff before, I would know to pay more attention to my symptoms and to be more clear about them, and maybe take more notes, so that when I went into the doctor, I could explain to them, because they only know what we tell them, and we know us, what's normal for us best. They don't. So then when we go into them, the more information that we can give them, the more that they will know right from the start, and the less that they will have to guess. And that will help a lot with getting a proper diagnosis. Next, I wanted to just talk about understanding doctors, and what I had to learn, and I wish I would have known this more, is I think a lot of times just being regular people, and we go to a doctor, we think that they know everything, and what I found is that they're very knowledge specific. So they know about their specific field. So my general practitioner sent me to a pulmonologist to get more information for my lungs, because the first thing when you say breathing issues or shortness of breath, you might think that it has to do with your lungs. So he sent me to a pulmonologist. The pulmonologist did some checks, PFTs, tests, and some x-rays, and came back with a diagnosis of COPD, gave me some inhalers, and sent me on my way. But he didn't find anything, or couldn't recognize any issues with the pH, even though he did x-rays and my heart was enlarged, and he didn't notice any of that. That's because it's not his area or his specialty, his area of expertise. So when I went back to my general practitioner and told him I went and saw the pulmonologist, I'm still having the same problems, then he started doing some other checks, stress tests, electrocardiogram. Those came back normal. I still went back to him again, telling him I still feel like something's wrong, like we're missing something, and he did an echocardiogram, which that had a little abnormality. So then he sent me to a heart doctor, and the heart doctor found that I had PH, and so he began treating me. But again, his specialty is the heart, and it wasn't, his area of expertise wasn't in pH. And if I would have known that there were pH specialists, I would have went to one right from the beginning. So it wasn't till I went to a pH specialist that I actually started to see improvement, which is my next point. For whatever it is that you're diagnosed, there are specialists in those fields, and you will be doing yourself a huge favor by going straight to the specialist and cutting out all the middleman, because they know about their area of expertise. And when I go to my pH doctor, even though he's pH and it has to do with the heart and the lungs, if I ask him a question specifically about the lungs, he doesn't know the answer. He'll say, you need to ask your pulmonologist about that. And if I go to my pulmonologist and I ask him a question about the heart, he can give me a general answer, but he really doesn't know the specifics about it. So if it has something to do with pH, I know I need to ask my pH doctor. If it has something to do with my lungs, I know I need to ask the lung doctor. And then it gets even more specific than that. So if you're going to have something done with your lungs, then I believe it's called a thoracic doctor. So they have their areas of expertise, and you want to make sure that you're dealing with people who are in their area of expertise. And it can be a waste of time and a waste of money as well, because, like, for example, if you're going to get diagnosed with pH, the proper way to get diagnosed with it is a right heart catheterization. The heart doctor could do a right heart catheterization, and then maybe and maybe not, he'll find that you have pH. Then he might send you to a pH specialist, but any good pH specialist is going to want to do his own right heart cath, because they're looking for something a little bit different than a regular heart doctor would. So if by chance your heart doctor wants to do a right heart catheterization to check for a pH, ask if there's a pH specialist that you can go to have it done, so that you'll get the most information and won't have to end up having the procedure done twice. So, these are just things to keep in mind, and I think it helps when we understand that doctors are just people too, and they have their areas of study and their areas of expertise, and some of them make it clear. Mine are really good about saying, hey, I don't know about that. Sometimes I think they try to answer questions that they do know, though not all of them will say, hey, I don't know. So just be aware that each doctor has their area of expertise, and that's really what they know about. Also, on a side note of that, it's up to us to really dig and look around for new information, like for new procedures that might be available, or new meds, or new tests that are in the pipeline coming, and things like that, because a lot of times our doctors get caught up with treating people and they're doing their thing. And it isn't until somebody else mentions, hey, I found this over here, can you take a look at it? And you show them a link and they'll spend some time looking at it, and then it brings the new stuff into their realm of awareness. And so, a lot of times you want to keep up with what's going on in your areas of need, because there can be new stuff out there that your doctor may not be familiar with. So, I always try to keep up with the latest and greatest information out there. The American Lung Association is great for that. Also, the PAH Association, Pulmonary Hypertension Association, is great for that. The American Heart Association. So you want to go to places to get information that are reputable. I also noticed too that when you first start digging for information on the web about anything, COPD, pH, heart disease, anything, it seems that you find the worst information first. So the scariest information is what comes to you first, and you really have to dig for the positive information. So make sure that when you get information, you're looking for it from reputable sources, and you're not just taking the first things out there and panicking. I know the pH site that I came across first told me I had 2 years to live. So that was super depressing. Once I got past that and I started digging for other stuff, I found out that people have been living for 20 and 30 years with it. Some people their whole entire life from when they were younger than me. So it pays to do your homework and get as much knowledge as you possibly can. Next the super important thing to do is to get a treatment plan. So you want to let your doctors know, what you are and aren't comfortable with. I don't like taking a lot of pills, so I did a lot of research to figure out what it is that I can do to help my body help itself, so that I can take the least amount of meds possible. So you want to get a treatment plan that you're comfortable working with and your doctor's comfortable with, and it's going to be probably 1 part them and 2 parts you. So, and what I mean when I say that is they're going to help you with that end of it. So in other words, the medical side of it, the meds and keeping up with like the technical stuff. And the other parts that are you is going to be on how well you follow a balanced nutrition and exercising. And exercising is huge for any of these things. It's actually huge for anything, any disease is usually helped by exercise. So you want to get an exercise plan and start learning more about nutrition and what foods help what. And, just starting to pay attention to the things that you eat because they affect how you breathe. So hopefully this wasn't too all over the place for you guys. And I tried to tie in a lot of different things, things that if someone would have just sat down with me when I first was diagnosed or when I was going through this, that I think these things would have helped to make it a little bit less scary. And for anybody going through this, I wish you the best of luck and just keep exercising.